Hi everyone, welcome to Chapter 4 on consciousness. Now consciousness has different interpretations, but essentially it refers to the sensory awareness of the environment. And so we are aware of what's going on. We can have a selective attention, which is the key to self-control. If we go to a party, we need to selectively decide what we're paying attention to. We cannot pay attention to the sound in the air conditioner and multiple conversations going on around us and the feel of our clothing, everything all at once. That's too much to really focus on. So selective attentions makes our senses sharp and helps us pick specific stimulus to pay attention to. So if I'm at a party, I'm focused on one conversation I'm having with somebody, and I'm able to ignore the rest of the sensations around me. A direct inner awareness is being aware of one's thoughts, images, emotions, and memories. So being aware enough to know what is going on in our minds. Sleep occurs with the circadian rhythm, and that's the internal process that regulates the sleep-wake cycle. And so for most people, they can go to sleep at night and then they wake up during the day. Teenager circadian rhythm runs on a later schedule, so they tend to sleep later naturally and want to go to bed later naturally. And so often this is affected by age, but it can also be affected by our work schedule and by stimulants if we're taking stimulants. This is the stages of sleep, and you can see that we're in a wake stage, and then we go into stage 1 sleep, stage 2 sleep, 3, and 4. And then REM sleep is where we get our most rest. And REM sleep occurs when we re-enter stage 1 about 90 minutes after falling asleep. New parents often have very little REM sleep. They get interrupted a lot by babies who are waking up. So this is why new parents are often sleepy, maybe frustrated, short on patience, because they are not getting good quality sleep. So we have about 5 cycles of sleep each night. The first period in stage 4 sleep is the longest, and sleep becomes lighter as the night wears on, and REM sleep becomes longer throughout the night, so the last REM period of sleep may actually last for 30 minutes. And it's important that we have good nights of sleep so that we can function well during the day, focus, pay attention, be able to control our frustration, be less impulsive. All of that is dependent on our sleep. Sleep rejuvenates the body. It helps us recover from stress. It helps consolidate learning, and it may promote the development of infant's brain. So sleep is important for our overall health. Sleep disorders include insomnia, and people who have trouble sleeping or going to sleep or staying asleep have an increased risk of anxiety, depression, diabetes, hypertension, and Alzheimer's disease. So you can see where this not only affects our emotional health, but also our physical health. Narcolepsy and sleep paralysis can occur at any time, even when driving. So narcolepsy is when a person will just randomly fall asleep. And this is thought to be a disorder of REM sleep functioning. Sleep apnea is where breathing repeatedly stops and starts during the sleep cycle, and people will wear CPAP machines to help them breathe better during the night so that it controls their sleep apnea. And then there's deep sleep disorders, including sleep terrors, bedwetting, and sleepwalking. And that's where we're not waking up when we need to. Okay, we can alter our states of consciousness. This can occur through hypnosis, and this is where people are given suggestions of behavior through a trance, and it's often used in medical procedures and to help cope with stress. So some people who are struggling with some emotional issues or some addictions may undergo hypnosis to help them learn to control their behavior. A hypnotic trance is induced by the hypnotist, and people who are easily hypnotized have hypnotic suggestibility. Role theory says that changes in behavior can be successfully imitated when people are instructed to behave as though they were hypnotized. So this is one of the benefits of hypnosis. And the response set theory says that expectations play a role in the production of experiences suggested by the hypnotist. So if you're expecting this to be successful and to work, then you have a better chance of benefiting from hypnosis. Meditation is another way to alter consciousness, and this is focusing one's consciousness to alter relationships between the self and the environment. And so through transcendental meditation, you concentrate on a mantra, and this produces a relaxation response. And the mantra could be just a quick, short saying like, I am well, I am well, I am well, and just saying that repeatedly. Mindfulness meditation helps us focus on the present than ruminating about problems. One popular one is soft belly breathing, and that's where you breathe in for a count of 4. You breathe into your abdomen, hold for a count of 5, and then breathe out through your mouth on a count of 6. And you do that maybe 2 or 3 times. It's called soft belly breathing because every time you breathe in, you say soft, and every time you exhale, you say belly. That's a type of mindfulness meditation. Biofeedback is a system that provides information about a bodily function in order to gain control over it, and it helps with stress, tension, and anxiety. So this is often used by sports psychologists to help athletes relax, and you can do this by saying, my legs feel heavy and warm, and you say that 10 times, focusing just on your legs, and then you move to a different part of your body. And this just helps you relax in segments throughout your body, different muscle groups. We can also alter our consciousness through drugs. There's psychoactive substances, and these are drugs that distort perceptions and change moods. And the DSM-5, which is our manual that we use to determine whether or not somebody is diagnosed with a disorder, defines substance use disorder in terms of behavioral, cognitive, and biological symptoms. So we're looking at these three areas to determine if there is a substance use disorder for someone. And the DSM-5 notes that changes in brain circuitry connected to impaired control over the use of a substance is one of the factors to consider. Depressants are drugs that lower the rate of activity of the nervous system. So if somebody is very anxious, they might be given a depressant to help them function. Stimulants are drugs that increase the activity of the nervous system. So somebody who is depressed might be given a stimulant to help them be motivated to get up and do what they need to do. The repeated use of substances can lead to impaired functioning, and this is characterized by the loss of control over the use of the substance, meaning the person just can't stop. If they say, okay, I can stop any day, and then they try one day and they just can't, they have to continue using the drug, this could lead to impaired functioning, meaning it could affect their jobs, their relationships, and their health. The biological symptoms are suggestive of addiction include tolerance, the need to take more and more of a drug to have the same effect, and the abstinence syndrome, which is a characteristic group of withdrawal symptoms. So the craving occurs when you don't have the substance, and it's really a struggle to stop using it. Now, people often experiment with drugs, and this can give them information about what it's like to use the drug, but it can also be dangerous because people can easily fall into being addicted to a drug. And people experiment based on the recommendation or observation of others. So typically we see this with teenagers who have their friends that are encouraging them to use drugs, or they're just watching people use drugs and they're curious about it and decide to try it themselves. People will often self-medicate to help them manage issues they're going through. So anxiety is a condition where people often self-medicate, because if you're very anxious and you use marijuana, that can help with your anxiety. Or if you're at a party and you're very anxious or you have social anxiety and you drink, that can help you relax a bit so that you can interact. And that's self-medication to help you with what you're experiencing. There can be a genetic predisposition toward a physiological dependence on drugs, but again, this is being exposed to the environment. So simply because you have a parent who's an alcoholic doesn't mean that you will become an alcoholic unless you create an environment where you are drinking often. Okay, alcohol is considered to be a depressant, It's linked to lowering productivity, loss of employment, and lowering social status. Somebody who's struggling with alcohol will see it impact their job, their grades, their schooling, and their relationships. Binge drinking is connected with aggressive behavior, poor grades, promiscuity, and accidents. Binge drinking occurs often in college, and it can have detrimental effects, including death. So people who binge drink or people who do use alcohol on a regular basis will find that they have lower inhibitions, so they might engage in riskier behaviors. It induces a feeling of euphoria and elation. It impairs cognitive functioning and coordination, which is why you should never ever drive while you drink. It affects women more as they have a less ability to absorb the alcohol than men, and it can lead to physiological dependence. Opiates and opioids are a group of narcotics derived from the opium poppy seed. Narcotics are drugs used to relieve pain and induce sleep, and this is usually reserved for opiates. Opioids are produced in a laboratory. And so oftentimes when people have some type of injury, they are given a narcotic to help them reduce pain, but they can easily become addicted to that narcotic. And so it has to be prescribed very carefully in a limited amount. Opioids also include morphine, heroin, codeine, and Demerol. This provides a strong euphoric rush, and it can also lead to physiological dependence. Barbiturates are depressants with medical use. They help relieve anxiety, tension, and pain. They treat epilepsy, high blood pressure, and insomnia. These, again, need to be used very carefully and only under the guidance of a doctor because people can easily become addicted to them. It rapidly leads to physiological and psychological dependence, and it's dangerous if mixed with alcohol. So a lot of places won't even prescribe barbiturates because of how easily people can become dependent on them. For stimulants, again, these are to increase our activity. These include amphetamines. Amphetamines can produce a euphoric feeling, so people may fall into deep sleep or depression if they become too addicted to amphetamines. Ritalin and Adderall are often used to treat ADHD in children, and it also increases the risk for sleep disorder and loss of appetite. Intolerance develops quickly and users can become dependent, so an increased dosage is needed for the same impact. Cocaine is also a stimulant. It produces euphoria, reduces hunger, deadens pain, and boosts self-confidence. There are physical dangers. It has sudden rises in blood pressure, decreased oxygen supply to the heart, increased heart rate, and respiratory and cardiovascular collapse. Cocaine is easy to overdose on, and you can create restlessness and insomnia, tremors, headaches, nausea, convulsions, hallucinations, and delusions. Cocaine is a very addictive drug, and it can have serious consequences. Nicotine is an addictive stimulant in tobacco smoke. It creates a physiological dependence on tobacco products. It enhances memory and attention and has a relaxing effect, but it also depresses the appetite and raises the metabolic rate. Electronic cigarettes are now very popular, and they also do contain nicotine, but they also are connected to cancers and should be avoided. So the effects of cigarette smoking include increasing the risk for lung cancer, and it can stiffen arteries, increase the risk of miscarriages, preterm birth, stillborn babies, and children with learning problems. And secondhand smoke is connected to respiratory illnesses and different types of cancers. So even if somebody doesn't smoke, if they're around somebody who does, they can take in the secondhand smoke and still have the same consequences. Hallucinogens include marijuana, and THC is a psychedelic substance, and marijuana is legal in a lot of states, but again, it's legal for people over the age of 21. Remember, we talked about how the frontal lobe is still developing until the age of 25, and so we do not want people smoking marijuana when their brains are still developing. Marijuana may alter time perception. It increases one's awareness of bodily sensations and heightens sexual sensations, but it can also cause disorientation that might be either pleasant or threatening. And it can also affect motor coordination, short-term memory, and learning can be impaired. And then if there's too much taken in or ingested, it can lead to nausea and vomiting. Regular users can experience tolerance and withdrawal symptoms, meaning that they need to use it more and more to get the same effect. And then if they quit using it, they will have withdrawal symptoms. And lastly, LSD and other hallucinogenics. LSD is a synthetic hallucinogen, and it produces vivid and colorful hallucinations. It can have lingering effects. It can cause flashbacks, distorted perceptions. These flashbacks can occur days, weeks, or longer after usage. An experience is termed hallucinogen persistent perception disorder for people that have long-term effects from using LSD. And other hallucinogens can also include mescaline and PCP. So our sense of awareness, our sense of consciousness, can be altered in many ways, and it does include our sleep schedule. It includes drug use. It can include meditation. So there are positive ways that we can affect our consciousness, but there are also negative ways that can have long-term effects on our overall health, both emotional and physical. So if you are considering using some type of substances, research it, see what the effects are, and make some good decisions. If you have a history of addiction in your family, you might really want to consider whether or not you want to risk ingesting substances and put yourself at risk for developing your own addiction, because it is so difficult to get over an addiction, not just with drugs, but with food, with sugar, with sex, with shopping. There's all types of addictions out there, and it's easier just to avoid them than put yourself in a situation where you're having to deal with the consequences of your addiction. So read your information and your textbook, do the activities this week, look at the supplemental materials I gave you. If you are struggling with some type of addiction, reach out to someone. There's some resources that I have on the course site, or you can also contact me and I can provide you some guidance. All right, everybody, have a good week. Contact me if you have any questions.